So, the final topic of the show is a fairly heavy one with tons of sources. So you will see that we have changed up our descriptions. They're no longer going to include the entirety of everything. We're going to have a link to a Google Doc because one, they're getting really long, and two, it allows us to share more sources with you without over inundating the actual description.
And you poor people watching on Spotify or listening on Spotify.
Oh, yeah, when you go to the description, it's awful. So we're trying to fix a couple of those things. Also, with the new chapters, you'll be able to see some of the stuff timestamped to make it a little bit easier to find the topics that you are looking for. All this stuff is pertinent to the beginning of the show, but here we are on the final topic of the show, talking about the sexual assault and abuse allegations that have proliferated Nerdom the past 2 weeks.
And this is one hell of a list to look at. I'm just saying.
100%. I mean, we have people from Wizards of the Coast, Cards Against Humanity, which I'm not going to lie, threw me for a whirl. Because if you've ever played that game, it's always real bad. But the fact that there are, like, bad for the employees in this regard, not great. Chris Avallone, who worked on Baldur's Gate and Dying Light 2. Warren Ellis and Charles Brownstein, both comic writers who have moved on to other things. Warren Ellis is working on the Castlevania series that John and I hold very dear to our hearts. Assassin's Creed director stepping down for a different reason. Not as pertinent here. However, still, Ubisoft has had tons of allegations coming out from various people about how their management
executives being put on suspension.
Correct. That they do not handle sexual misconduct whatsoever well. And then, of course, the Twitch allegations. This is a very large list. We definitely don't have time to talk about every single one here. So rather than focusing in on one specific topic, what I would like to talk more about is how do we as a community handle these situations, and what can we do to communicate with these companies about, what it is we're looking for, as well as employees?
Because I think it really starts at the government level. Once you're found to be a, serial harasser or anything to the extent of you just automatically get castrated. That'll stop this entirely.
Are we talking chemical or physical?
I'll give you the choice. I promise chemical is not that great.
That's very kind of you. I feel like the physical is at least a little bit more emblematic of the issue.
At least you probably get put under or something like that for the chemical or for the physical one. So,
So,
and done by the victim.
Jeez. Do it.
Oh no, it's going to be some law-abiding citizen up in this. Just
there you go. So, I mean, it's very obvious that this is not in one location, right? I think that's the first response is always, well, it's one person. It's one bad apple as the excuse that keeps going around for every situation.
Hearing that.
Which it's evident that's not the case.
No, it's culture. It's what they feel like they can get away with. And it's not just sexual harassment. It's abuse of all kinds. It's a power that they derive from being over you, knowing that you're not going to say anything, knowing you're not going to do anything about it, because they enjoy feeling that power. And that is, honestly, it's the worst part of it, but it's the truth. And it's something that won't change. And like this, where you just have a shotgun blast of everybody like, you know what? Yeah, we're all in a really good mood of just pointing out everybody's bullshit. So let's just go ahead and get it out.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein truly was the tipping point.
Yeah.
If you watch how everything is going, especially with the Me Too movement and everything else, it really peaked with him, and it has just took off. And it has been everywhere and anywhere. It's not just the gaming industry; it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
And that's something that people, they look at it like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that bad over there at Insomniac, or not Insomniac, but over at Ubisoft. And it's like, it's not just there, though. Those are the ones that were just talked about. You have multiple people coming out on Twitter saying, I'm not going to name names or companies because I'm not comfortable with that. But there was this and this happened. I'm like, all those people didn't work at Ubisoft.
Yeah.
So obviously there is a bigger issue and a systemic issue within that we need to address. But it's something that people need to understand. Like, HR is there to kind of guard the company, and we all know it. And that's why that needs to change. There needs to be a third-party aggregate that goes in and says, we're going to protect this person while also investigating this, so this person can't be retaliated against under any circumstance. That needs to be available and ready and secure. It needs to almost be on the level of witness protection at that point.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with you entirely. Something that is available that an employee can turn to where they don't feel like the entirety of the system is set against them. Because you're absolutely right. Anybody who believes that HR is there to protect you is very naive. They have not worked in a large corporation.
It's there to protect the company. That's it.
Yeah, they're solely covering their own asses. As they should, because when you're a large corporation and you have a ton of people underneath you, you have to figure out how to manage this kind of
liability
handler. Yeah, but that doesn't absolve the company of any sort of right here. Like, again, Ubisoft Yves Guillemot, the CEO, has specifically spoken out. That he's working on things. He's the one who's going to look into it personally. Of leaving the executives, which I think is great. But my concern is what happened when the last thing happened. Did it not get to ease, or did he just slide it under the rug because that was easier? And that's always the big concern with this, because if you don't have a system in place and you're relying upon an individual, you're always going to be dealt with the issues of power and control, like you're talking about, John.
Well, also, it doesn't help that our court system basically says, well, here, what we'll do is we know that we're a bunch of sickos, so what we're going to do is pay you off, and then you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we all just wash our hands of this. Yeah. And it's like, no, because you're still a pedophile or a rapist or a harasser or a relentless harassment lawsuit walking. Mm-hmm. Like, you need to be dealt with. This isn't something that should go away with money. And it is, when you have a court system that's built in that way, companies are going to follow suit, because that's how they follow their protocols, is based on how they're going to deal with lawsuits. What's the cost and benefit to paying the settlement or just going with it? And and this is why no one hears. Everybody's like, I just don't understand. You don't hear anything, and it's because people are afraid of retaliation. Yep. And they are paid off, and that's why you don't hear of it.
Even though you see it in all the
money, it's not even funny.
Even though you see it in all the HR paperwork, we're a no retaliation company. No big. You don't have to worry about that here. Again, it's CYA for the company. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All they have to do is prove it, and they're not going to be able to, because word of mouth is not provable unless someone's making a recording.
It is. I shouldn't be shocked. I really shouldn't. I don't think anybody should be shocked under the circumstances that we have seen over and over again. But it is still,
especially with our president.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. But I mean, it still is completely surprising to me that we see these names, and they should be named 100%. Chris Avallone, Warren Ellis, Charles Brownstein, Max Temkin, Noah Bradley. You should know these people's names. Like, every single one of these people have these allegations arise, and I am not saying that they are completely, guilty at this moment, but we have to talk about it, and we have to talk about it in a very serious manner, where we are pulling in the people who are involved without retaliation in a space where they feel safe, and that we can pull in the evidence that's necessary for it. I think all of this needs to happen, and we don't have the systems in place from a societal standpoint, let alone from a company standpoint.
Right.
It's,
sorry, the hat was taken out.
You're good.
And I was like, well, if you want to see my face.
And we saw, John and I were talking about it over the weekend. We were watching people from IGN coming out, both people who currently work there and who have left, talking about the co-founder, Tal Blevkin, and how he sexually assaulted not just women, but men there at the company. I mean, all of these things.
How would you feel if someone just came over and rubbed their crotch up against your ass? I'm sorry, but if someone did that to me out in the wild, the first thing I would do is push them away and threaten them, saying, you come and do that again, I'm going to knock you out. But when you're in the workplace, you can't do that.
But the problem is, if your boss did that and you really depended on that money to be able to live, it changes your perspective quite a bit.
So many of these companies,
makes it even more egregious, in my opinion, because they know they have that power, and they know that you're that weak. Mm-hmm. That you're like, you want this paycheck, right? You live in a high rent area. You're not going to be able to not afford this paycheck. So how does my cock feel in your ass?
The difference now. The difference now too is I think we're in a social climate now where when allegations and whistleblowers like this come out about these kind of issues, I think as the individual you have a lot more pull now than you ever did before.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot more serious now because you've seen more and more and more of the masses come out about individuals and high profile individuals, even, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein being like two of the most notable that come to mind offhand, but there are
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. There are hundreds of them that are high profile people anyway that can easily come to mind. And I think the biggest thing now with people's voices having the capability of, and not to say that people don't still feel like that they're screaming into a void sometimes, but you have a higher capability of not just screaming into a void because you have to follow specific protocols. You can just go straight to Twitter with a following of over 1,000 people and it will blow up in minutes.
It doesn't matter. All you have to do is attach the company, because every company pretty much has a Twitter now. Attach that company with that person's name and say, this is what happened. Mm-hmm. And if you want to contact me, DM me through this Twitter account.
Right. Now
we'll have a conversation.
There are a lot of people who I understand don't want to have that kind of notoriety, that want to go through a more anonymous method. And the problem is, but the problem is that you still want to be an identifiable person to some extent if you're going to do it through a public fashion. The issue is that if you're going to follow proper chain to do that, you can still feel like you're screaming into a void if you try to do that the anonymous route. And I understand a lot of people want to do that because they don't want to be identified as, oh, I'm the person who had to get extorted by Harvey Weinstein to be able to get an acting role. Like that's not something you want to. You really want to identify with yourself at, and those are the people who generally end up in the shit on it. Honestly,
I mean, there was a person, for instance, with Harvey Weinstein. She was nominated or won an award for her first role that she was ever in. I can't remember her name for the sake of my life, but because she wouldn't satisfy his wants, he ended up contacting all the producers saying she's not worth it. She's too hard to deal with, and she was never heard of again.
Right. The big thing is making sure that you're, and in this day and age, recording your conversations with people. Mm-hmm. Most states that people live in now are single party states. You don't have to get the other person's consent to be able to record unless you're recording over the phone. Then it's wiretapping. Absolutely. That's an entirely different thing.
Well, there's also, if there's postings of video and audio recording is happening on the premises, then at that point in time, they pretty much F themselves.
Yeah. Oh, well, so the difference of video and audio recording is it has to be in a public place. So if you're having a conversation with someone in, I don't know, there was a Twitch streamer or an actress, I think that was live streaming at the time with her producer or her agent, and was getting sexually harassed by him. But she opened up her live stream to be able to broadcast it. And her streamers were like, whoa, this is kind of messed up. And a bunch of people, started recording it, and a bunch of people started reporting it for the area and that kind of thing. But they're inside the studio or inside the auditorium, so there's no expectation of privacy inside there. So the recording of the live stream of it technically is legal. The problem is if you're in an office, when you get into a private situation with somebody, that's when it gets kind of gray area-ish. But there's still nothing that says you can't go out in public and scream to the high heavens, this happened to me. And from a social perspective, now obviously you still have to follow through with official proceedings. You still have to, you still have to follow through with a lawsuit to some extent.
Land. I mean, that would probably be necessary until things change to stop other people from getting hurt. Yeah, you might lose your job because they figured out a way around it. But at least everybody knows that dude's a pervert and he's a predator, or she. I'm not going to gender bias this one.
Yeah.
It just, there needs to be a voice, but there needs to be protections too. There's no reason why we can't create these. Mm-hmm. And, it's going to take a large group of people getting together and doing the right thing to create this. And especially in an industry where you have unions, you would think this would be pretty freaking easy.
So that's what I was about to bring up, is the fact that I do believe that this is another interesting argument to be made about creating unions and about how sometimes they don't help, because the video game industry specifically doesn't have actual unions. Video game journalism doesn't really have unions, Kotaku being the exemption to that actual argument. But like, your company itself can unionize. When you talk about unions, it's not about making an industry-wide union, which is what movies have done, which is one thing. But there are actual unions where it is, we IGN people want to make a union, and we use this voice to help leverage and protect one another.
Right.
That's one way for employees to hold the company accountable to some regard, because the whole point is you're all standing together.
Right.
And in that moment, you don't have to really, if your fear is choosing a side between what you view as just an office conflict, I think you're wrong. But if that's the case, you get to use the excuse of the union anyways, right? Like that allows everyone kind of an out to be like, well, I am part of the union, so regardless if I agree or not, this is where we're going.
Right.
I just want to put this out. If you feel like this is just an office conflict issue, I want you to imagine your daughter or son being sexually harassed or raped by somebody and what you would do to them.
Yeah. Tell me you're not going to want to inflict some kind of physical violence upon, some person that, or at least seek some sort of like life-changing retribution against that person to be able 100%. to fight against that for your own child, that kind of thing.
I already brought this up. Everybody just gets to castrate them.
Castrate each other, yeah. I mean, we talked about a little bit of IGN, but, they're not the only ones. Ubisoft has studios, the Cards Against Humanity in Chicago. Like, all of these places, all these companies work in large cities. They require their coworkers and their people to have rent there. The IGN's the example I'm using because there was a ton of information there. But, like, they literally have staff members in the early to late 2000s, like, they were underpaying them and telling them, hey, it's just company culture that you just go and find some roommates within the company so you all live together. So that means that you don't get enough money to pay for your own rent. If you were to fight against these sexual allegations and then get fired for it, you wouldn't have enough money to cover your rent. And therefore, you were being pressured from the social standpoint and the company standpoint to not talk about this, to just eat it.
I would say if it was a company sanctioned thing, the company would own the apartments and everything to say that it's, their space.
Company culture, not company sanctioned. Mm-hmm. It's a cultural thing here, which, there's plenty of people, Colin Greg being one of them.
Like,
some people benefited from it, but a lot of people were hurt from this system because of the fact that it gave people in power the ability to abuse them.
There's no reason why you can't say you guys should room together, find someone that you relate to, and see if you can cohabitate, and it will make your work life a little bit easier because it's easier to talk to someone about work stuff. This is a totally different subject, but it's nice to have someone to be able to relate to at the house that works on the same type of schedule you do and works as hard as you do. Like,
it's the college experience in the workplace.
Yeah, conceptually it worked really well. The problem is it also led to even more abuse of power because it basically locked people in. Like once you've built that bond with someone, you don't want to let them down. Like regardless of the pain you're going through, why cause somebody else pain? I mean, that's a natural human reflex of, well, I can take this burden on because X, Y, and Z. When you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to make that decision. That's the wrong part about this entire thing.
Agreed.
And so I like the third party idea of having people involved that are not part of the company that stand for company rights. I think unions can work out well. Obviously, I'm not saying that's a blanket statement to solve all the problems, but assess the situation and go for it. You think that's going to work for you.
Just the situation.
If the company's got HR, an entire organization just to protect the company, there's no reason why a union can't exist. An entire organization dedicated to protect the employees.
Correct. 100%.
Having been a previous union member at an old job of mine, I recommend trying to form a union regardless of any kind of anti-union propaganda you might see from companies or whatever. They are a good thing to fight on your behalf, and you have a voice in them, and that's the point.
Yes, 100%. And of course, using your own voice. I mean, I think the one thing that has come out of all of this pain has been the fact that people are able to work with one another, either coping or, getting the courage to tell their own story, helping one another. Like the outpouring of support for every individual involved has been fantastic. And quite frankly, if you don't speak out as hard as it is, I am not sitting here telling you it's going to be easy, nor am I in a place or position to say you should go do this because, I do come from a level of privilege to a degree, right? And so the only thing I'm saying is that if you come out and have the courage to do so and the strength to do so, there are people there who will support you, and you will be helping other people because you're not the only victim.
Right.
Guaranteed, you are not the only victim.
Yep.
But somebody's got to go first. Is the big difference there?
It is. It's tough. It is tough. But
the best thing you could do is try to be the last.
Absolutely. So please let us know what your thoughts are on this topic. It's a very heavy topic. There's tons of reading in the Google Doc you will find. But I do encourage, because it is important for you to understand who these people are, what the allegations are. I mean, we talk a lot on this show about people being hurt, and there's plenty of people out there who are looking for X, Y, and Z evidence. Well, here's your chance to read the stories. Be involved. If you're truly want to fight on either side of this, you have to understand every aspect of it. So please go and read. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments floating above me like an angry cloud, because I just can't believe people have to go through this garbage bullshit.
Yeah,
I'll
really is.
I'll
complete bullshit.
receive. I'll accept it. Yes.